Resourceful Designer, episode 226. What got you here won't get you there.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He loves drinking those foamy bubbles right after pouring a carbonated drink. Mark Dakeout.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this episode, I'm going to talk about mindset and what it takes to get ahead in this business. I'm also going to share a new podcast you may be interested in. And I'll finish the episode with a question from Ryan about written content for client projects. Now, what have I been up to this week? Well, I presented at the PodFest Global Summit. This was an online summit that was put on by PodFest Multimedia Expo, which is the same conference that I went to in March, right before COVID locked everything down. Well, they decided to do an online summit, and not only that, but they actually registered with the Guinness Book of World Records to be the largest online podcast conference. And they had a goal to meet. I'm not exactly sure what the goal was, but it happened right on the second last day of the conference. We reached the goal and got the record. And because I was a speaker at the event, technically I can say that I helped to set the world record. And I believe I could even apply to Guinness to get a certificate with my name on it saying so, which might be something cool to do, just to say that I have it. But I did do a presentation. My presentation was on 5 mistakes that podcasters make with their websites. And the presentation went really well. So well, in fact, that within 30 minutes of my presentation, I received 4 emails from people saying not that they needed a website from me because they already had one, but asking if I offered consultation in order to review their website to make sure that it was working properly and that they had everything they need. So that wasn't a service I had listed on the site, but it quickly became one. So I guess now I'm also a consultant for podcast websites. So anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. Other than that, I've been working on a few websites for my clients, working on a branding, a logo part of a brand right now. Still in the early development stage. I'm coming up with ideas, haven't actually gone to computer with. Right now I'm just in the sketching stage, but having a little bit of fun. I've got a long time frame to work on this one, so I'm really taking my time and making sure I get it right. So that's just a little bit of what I've been up to. Now, of course, the Resourceful Designer community is going strong. This past week, not only did we have our regular weekly video chat just to catch up and see how everybody's doing, we had a great conversation there. But it was also the week that a few of us, those of us at the mastermind level, which I know I don't talk about very often, but mastermind level is a second tier of the community. And in that one, there's just a small handful of us that get together once a month and we do a deep dive and discuss things really deeply about our business. So it's a little bit more in depth, a little bit more business oriented, a lot more strategy and helping each other out. At least a lot more so than what we do in the regular video chat for the community as a whole. Now, other than those video conversations, we have some great conversations in the Slack channel. Lots of people asking for help, lots of people offering help, critiques, and all sorts of stuff. It's just a great place to hang out. We're really getting to know each other. And as I said last week, the Resourceful Designer community, it's a safe place for you to have a conversation with people that are on the same journey as you. People who are starting, running, and just want to grow their design business. And you can rest assured that in the community, you're not going to encounter all the drama and the BS that you see in other groups when you ask questions, because there's people that just anonymous, people that you don't know who they are, answering stupid ways or making fun of you or sometimes just trolling you. So there's none of that in the Resourceful Designer community. Everybody is very respectful and everybody is very eager to help. So if you're looking for a group of peers, people that are on the same journey as you to connect with, converse with, and just be friends with, then why not check out the Resourceful Designer community at resourcefuldesigner.com/community. Now, I'm happy to announce that this week's episode of Resourceful Designer is supported by the new season of Wireframe by Adobe. Wireframe is a podcast all about how UX can help technology fit into our lives. Now, as you know, this pandemic, COVID that's going on right now, it's really changed our habits, the way we do things. And in this podcast, host Khoi Vinh, the Senior Director of Design at Adobe, he's going to do a deep dive and explore how design actually interacts with the changes that we face in everyday lives and everything we touch, how design applies to it. Now, the people at Wireframe were nice enough to give me a sneak peek of their third season, so I actually listened to it a little while back. The first couple of episodes have already come out, and let me tell you, it's quite the treat. It's funny, they have one episode that discusses how people of a certain generation have trouble with technology and how design affects how different age groups will either understand or not understand technology. Now, some of the stories that I'm told they'll be covering this season are how user experience design helps people manage stress and sleeplessness, how design helps people find something good to watch on streaming platforms. So whenever you're going to look for a TV show or a movie, how the UX design behind that will actually help you find the right show, as well as how design can contribute to either the success or the failure of a crowdsourcing campaign. It doesn't really matter if you are a UX or a UI designer, even if you're just someone who's curious about how design impacts everyone's lives, there's something in this show for you. So to listen to Wireframe, you can either just search for Wireframe in your favorite podcast app, like the one that you're using right now to listen to Resourceful Designer. Or to make it even easier for you, I created a link, resourcefuldesigner.com/wireframe, and that'll take you directly to their website with all the information you need. Or, of course, you can always find the link. It'll be in the show notes to this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 226. So many ways you can get to the podcast. I hope you check it out. And I want to thank Wireframe very much for supporting Resourceful Designer. And now, what got you here won't get you there. Now, for the record, I know that that's actually the title of a book by Marshall Goldsmith. It's actually a book that's on my reading list, but I've got a really long reading list and a lot of books I haven't got to yet, and that's one of them. But it's not the book that I wanted to talk to you about. Of course, since I don't know it, I haven't read it yet, I can't really talk to you about it. But it's that phrase itself. What got you here won't get you there. I've actually heard that phrase several times over the last couple of weeks from different people. And it got me thinking about my own life and my design career and my business, or should I say businesses. And I think you should start thinking about what that phrase means to you and your own design career and business. What got you here won't get you there. At its core, it's such a simple statement, and yet it holds so much truth. You can only get so far in life if you stick to the status quo. In order to advance, in order to grow, you need to expand yourself. And you need to do things that you've never done before. Otherwise, you'll never be more successful than you are right now. Now, are you okay with that? I know I'm not. Don't get me wrong, I love my life right now. But if you tell me that this is it, this is as successful as I'm going to be, no, I won't accept that. Yes, it would end up being a good life, but I want more. And thinking back over my career, I can pinpoint specific times when I wanted more, pushing myself, learning new things, or just taking a leap propelled me to bigger and better things. Now, as you may or may not know, I started working in the design department of a commercial printer straight out of college. I was one of several designers working there, all of which had graduated from the same school as I had, but all the other designers had graduated many years prior to me. And they had been working at that print shop for a long time by the time I got there. And of course, being the new guy, I was at the bottom of the hierarchy. I was getting, the no fun jobs. They were passed on to me. And that was to be expected. I had graduated as a graphic designer, and I got my first job at a junior level. My education had gotten me where I was, but it wouldn't propel me any further. Now, while the other designers were satisfied with, I must say, it was a good salary, and of course there was benefits on top of that, so we were well compensated for the work. And the other designers were satisfied with what they were getting, but I wasn't. I didn't want to be doing that same thing day in, day out, especially being at the bottom of the food chain. And quickly, without even realizing it, I was following the what got you here won't get you there principle. I started reading books. I subscribed to magazines. I asked the print shop's owner to send me to conferences and training seminars. And you know what? He actually obliged. He saw the value in me going to these things. The other designers had no interest. They didn't want to do any of that stuff, but I did. And soon, me, who was the new guy at the bottom of the totem pole, I was the one teaching the veteran designers there new ways to do things. And as the years went by, I kept expanding my skills, I kept expanding my knowledge until I became the go-to person in the design department. And suddenly, I was at the top. But was I satisfied? No. I was happy. I was content designing and doing some great stuff. But then I found out about this new thing called the World Wide Web. I discovered that there were these pages built by computer programmers that you could visit for all sorts of information. And as I discovered more about this new World Wide Web thing, that's when I read an article in one of the magazines that I subscribed to saying that the World Wide Web was a new frontier for graphic designers. And that really intrigued me. My graphic design skills had gotten me to where I was. But this was a new frontier, and my skills wouldn't be enough for me to conquer this new avenue of design. Now, at the time, and you got to imagine this is the early to mid-90s, computer programmers ruled the plains, that World Wide Web. They were the ones that made websites, but they made very clunky and, frankly, very ugly websites. And that left the space open for graphic designers to come in and build aesthetically pleasing websites, let's put it that way. Websites that were not only functional, but were nice to look at. But of course, I didn't have the skills. And learning how to program, well, it wasn't an easy thing to do, especially if you didn't have a background in it. Now, luckily, at the time that I was discovering all of this, Adobe came out with a new WYSIWYG program. And if you're not sure what WYSIWYG means, it stands for What You See Is What You Get. It was a new program that they put out called Adobe PageMill. And when it came time at the print shop to buy a brand new scanner, I specifically asked the owner if we can buy a certain scanner because it came packaged with Adobe PageMill. So we got the scanner we needed, and I got this software that allowed me to experiment with building websites for the World Wide Web. Now later, Adobe PageMill was updated and became Adobe SiteMill, and after that, Adobe released Adobe Go Live, and I learned through those programs how to build good-looking websites. It was to the point where I started a side gig at home designing websites. So I was doing that while I was still working at the print shop. There's more to the story than that. The print shop started off offering web design and they decided they didn't want to, so I took on the web part of it and brought it home, and the owner of the print shop was fine with that. And I was really happy with that setup. To me, it was the best of both worlds. I was designing print stuff during the day and web stuff in the evenings. However, my web clients didn't think it was that great. They didn't like the idea of me only working on stuff in the evenings and not being able to talk to me during the day, or having to pay 2 different invoices or dealing with 2 different companies if they wanted to get a logo and business card and website all done at the same time. And that's when I realized that it might have been a perfect situation for me, but it was less than ideal situation for my clients. And if I wanted to rectify that problem, I needed to make some changes. What got you here won't get you there. Now, I didn't really know how to run a business, but I knew it's what I needed to do if I wanted to take my career to the next level. So at that point, I decided to leave the print shop and offer everything that I was doing as a designer, both web and print, under my own brand, working from home. Now, I'm not going to continue through my entire history here, but I do want to tell you that there are many times since I started my business that I needed to take a leap in order to get me there. At some point, I stopped creating quote unquote pretty websites and started offering strategic websites. At some point, I stopped doing everything myself and started hiring freelancers and contractors to help me. And that opened up a whole new world for me. No longer did I have to turn down work that I wasn't capable of or comfortable doing. I can continue to offer great services to my clients by farming out those parts that I couldn't handle myself. I grew my team to include programmers, illustrators, photographers, designers, copywriters, translators, and more. That was all stuff that helped my business grow. Before that, what had got me to that point was not going to help me get any further. I needed to hire those people or work with those or partner with them, whatever you want to call it. I needed to work with them in order to get me to that next level. Then at some point, I realized that charging for my services by the hour was not really a sustainable model for growth. I mean, the only way to make more money doing that was to either work longer hours, which didn't really sound great to me, or substantially raising my hourly rate, which at the time, I was just working locally. All of my clients were local clients. And I knew that raising my rates would not go over well in my community. But what got you here won't get you there. So I changed my pricing strategy. Instead of billing by the hour, I started billing by the project. And it's funny the mentality of some clients. Some clients balk at the idea. If you say, I charge $100 per hour and it's going to take 3 hours to do a project, so that's $300, they'll go, are you crazy? $100 an hour in that? But if I just tell them this project's going to cost you $300, they wouldn't question the price because they had nothing to base it on. But anytime I said that my hourly rate was this, all of a sudden they'd go, wow, that's expensive for somebody who just draws a lot. Why are you making so much? So switching from hourly to project-based pricing eliminated that conversation and allowed me to charge more for the services I was offering without getting the pushback from my clients. So I changed my billing strategy and started billing by the project. And then later, as the years went by and I got more comfortable, I started using value-based pricing. Now, if you want to know more about these various pricing strategies, go back and listen to episode 11 of the podcast, which was titled Pricing Strategies for Your Design Business. It's a really good one that goes over all these different ways of charging your clients. And then I started introducing other things to my business. Discovery meetings, something that I didn't really do. Before, it was just maybe a 5-minute phone call. Well, I started offering longer, sometimes hours long discovery meetings to go over exactly what the client needed. Brand strategy sessions, similar to discovery, but more after the fact, before the design starts, but a little bit farther on in the whole process. So brand strategy sessions, something I didn't do before, but by starting that, it helped propel my business. Developing a client onboarding process, which I did an entire series on from episode 160 through 166. You can go back and listen to those, client onboarding. Even offering contracts. When I first started off, I didn't worry about contracts. It wasn't until later on in my design career that I realized the value of design contracts and I started offering them. And that helped me get the higher end clients. People, when they realized there was a contract involved, all of a sudden they trusted me more. These are just some of the things that I implemented in order to grow my design business. And what I'm trying to say here is, are you happy with your career right now, today? Can you imagine continuing as you're doing right now for the rest of your working life, right up until you retire? If you're like me, and there's a good chance you are, then the answer is an easy no. Like me, you probably want bigger and better things in your future. It's what gets you up in the morning. It's what makes you eager to get to work, is what the future holds. But remember, what got you here won't get you there. So think about it. Where do you imagine yourself in a year's time, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? What steps do you need to take today, tomorrow, next week, next month in order to propel your design business to that next level and beyond? Any good business person, heck, any good person for that matter, should never be satisfied with their current situation. They should always be striving for more, to better themselves, to grow their business, to accomplish bigger and better things. And that's what I'm constantly doing. And that's what I want you to do as well. So what's stopping you from taking that next leap? Because, once again, what got you here won't get you there. Now, I would love to know what you thought of this episode. Does it hit home with you? Is it going to help you grow your business? Is it going to push you on to the next level? Let me know. Leave a comment for it by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 226. And now, as I said, I've got a question of the week. I haven't had one of these in quite a while, but it's nice to get back to them. And if you have a question, I'm always available. If you want to submit a question for the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback, and I would gladly answer your question on a future podcast episode. But this week's question comes in from Ryan. He says, how do you handle written content on your client projects? I was wondering if you hire that out to another company, if you write it, or do you require the client to write their own content? I'm having a hard time with the content for my clients' websites and thought your perspective would be helpful in my decision. Well, thanks for the question, Ryan. And this is a really good one. And again, if you think back to this week's episode topic, what got you here won't get you there. That's all part of the process. At one point, I insisted that the clients give me all the copy, and all I would do is copy and paste. And that was it. They were responsible. Then, as I became more comfortable as a designer and I grew and I started to expand my knowledge and my skills, I started helping my clients out a little bit. Sometimes the way they wrote something sounded too technical or that. So I would kind of tweak it a little bit, rewrite it. Not embellish, but just make it sound better. Sometimes I would add little things just on my own. I remember doing a website for a woodworker. This was a company. They create all sorts of wood furniture and wood cabinetry and all that. Everything, it's all wood. And when I did their website, I thought, this website really needs something different. And I saw in the copy they provided me, it was established in, I think it was 1986 was when the company was established. So instead of putting on the website, established in 1986, I put down the line, breathing sawdust since 1986. And that was just something I came up with. So I put it on the website and the client loved it. And they've told me over the years how many people have commented on that line and thinking how funny it was, but they got it. The company's been around since 86 and they've been breathing sawdust ever since. So I would often do things like that, add little things in, expand on things. Sometimes I would take the copy, if say it was for a brochure and the client would give me some information, some copy, I would break it apart and put it in different sections. Instead of just having one big paragraph for that, I might break up a paragraph and make quotes out of them and scatter them around the brochure and that. So I would do little things like that. But then as time went by, I became more and more comfortable writing and rewriting things. So now I do a lot of that. And depending on the client, as I said in today's episode, at some point I started hiring people out or hiring out to people, contractors and freelancers. Well, one person, or actually a few different people over the years I've contracted out to are copywriters. And I will often get a copywriter on board to help sometimes write the content for a client, or as a case I'm working on right now with a new client. We're developing an entire brand and the client knows all their content really well, but she knows that she's not a good writer. So she asked me, is there any way I can write everything out, but then you make it sound better? And I said, yeah, I have a copywriter that can do that. So I'm hiring a copywriter to take all the written copy that my client provides me, and the copywriter is going to rewrite it in a better way, a way that's more akin to a website, because this is a web project mostly. So it's more akin to a website that'll help sell. So the wording and the terminology and all that will help it better. Plus, my copywriter also takes in some SEO. So whenever she's writing the copy, she takes into consideration that this is for a website. So SEO plays into the thing. So she does some keyword research and decides which words would be better used and stuff like that. So I've offered all different things over the years, and even now sometimes, but it all depends on how you're charging the client. Like my current client that I said that I'm hiring this copywriter, I actually presented various prices, and I use the 3-tier pricing approach, which you can learn more about in episode 145 of the podcast, 3-tiered pricing strategy. Quickly go over the strategy is you offer 3 different levels of pricing with increasing more service. And in this case, I had the middle tier was the one where the client would write the content and the copywriter would then edit it and make it sound better. The first tier was the client would just write it and we would copy and paste as is. Then there's the one I told you about. And then the third tier was the copywriter would write all the content, but would require a lot more because the copywriter would have to go meet with the client, interview them for long periods in order to figure out exactly what to write. And the client just thought that was a little bit too expensive. The price did jump quite a bit for that service. So the client was happy to go with the second one where they're going to write everything out, supply it, and then the copywriter is going to rewrite it. But that's just one way of doing it. What you don't want to do is just copy and paste the client's copy if you know it's not going to be effective. Now, I was doing that at the beginning where I said I would just copy and paste whatever they gave me. But sometimes you read the copy and you just know that this copy is not going to help them at all. It's not going to make people want to buy. It's not going to entice people to donate or whatever the copy is meant to do. And you realize that sometimes you have to have a conversation with the client and tell them that, because they may be blind to the fact that the copy is going to come off that way because they sometimes being on the inside, they may use jargon, they may use terminology that other people might not understand, and they don't even realize that. So sometimes it involves, even if the client's going to supply the copy, sometimes it involves having a conversation about what sort of copy they need to supply you. And then if you're comfortable with it, if you know that your English and that is good enough, your grammar, I actually use a tool called Grammarly to double check everything to make sure that there's no grammatical errors or spelling errors. And I've got an affiliate for them, resourcefuldesigner.com/Grammarly. If you want to check them out, I've been using them for years and they're great. And I make sure that all the copy on every project I do gets run through that. Now, just one final thing that I will mention here, Ryan, is I make sure that in my contract that I get my client to sign, it does state that they have to approve the final copy, whether they supply it, whether I rewrite some of it, or whether we get a copywriter on board. The client has final say on the copy, and once they sign off on it, if any errors are found afterwards, whether I made an error, the copywriter made an error, or whatever, even if it was an error while I was copying and pasting something that the client supplied me, if the final piece has some sort of error on it, the client is responsible, and that's in my contract. So if you do use a contract, which I hope you do, I highly suggest you have some sort of clause in there just stipulating that you as the designer are not responsible for any grammatical, spelling, or any errors found with the copy, including missing copy, once the client signs off on the project. So I hope that answers your question, Ryan. If not, send me another email and we can continue this conversation. But I hope what I said is useful. Now, I want to remind you one more time, if you have a question that you would like me to answer on a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit yours. And before I go, I just want to remind you of the new season of Wireframe by Adobe. It's a podcast on UX and UI design. Even if that's not the type of designer you are, you may be really interested in listening. It's a short season, and I think you'll enjoy it very much. To find out more, search for Wireframe in your favorite podcast app. Look for a link in the show notes for this episode, or just visit resourcefuldesigner.com/wireframe, which will redirect you to the podcast's website. So once again, thanks Wireframe for supporting Resourceful Designer. And of course, I would love to have you be part of the Resourceful Designer community, a growing community of great designers, all on a very similar journey as you. And if you're looking for peers, people that you can talk to, connect with, and just become friends with people that you're not competing with, and communicate in a way that has no drama and no BS like other platforms, then consider joining the Resourceful Designer community at resourcefuldesigner.com/community. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode. And until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business. And as I always do, I want to remind you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.